Welcome back to another video, and today I am finally reviewing the Reckoning of Roku, which is the first installment of the Roku books. It's taken me a while to do this. There are reasons for that. We'll get into that. First, I'm going to be giving a small summary of the book without any major spoilers so that people that might want to read the book can get an idea of what it's about without the spoilers. And I'm going to give like my short thesis at the end of that little summary, and then we'll get into the details of what I liked, what I didn't like, and all that. So let's get started. The Reckoning of Roku is a novel about Roku's beginnings as an avatar. It literally starts at the day that he's announced the avatar, and delves into his first experiences as the avatar. His journey does start very much more traditionally in the fact that they announce his avatarhood, he's whisked to the Southern Air Temple to learn the ways of the nomads, and with them, they offer disaster relief to towns all over the world. And Roku's first tasks are really boring. They're relatively boring in the context of everything that we've seen in the Avatar universe. But eventually he gets tied into this conflict on a remote island, and this island guards a cave that is a host for immense spiritual energy, and it's this resource that is the heart of the conflict for the story. And yeah, this book focuses more on the character dynamics between Roku, Gyatso, Malaya, and also Sozin. So Malaya is a new character. All the other characters I think are relatively familiar to Avatar fans. And the mystery of Yungib, the spirit, this cave spirit, is essentially the driving force for the plot in this novel. So that's a quick rundown of what this book is about. Now, for my opinions, I don't think that this was my favorite Avatar novel, mostly because, one, biasly, I already don't like Roku that much. Like, I don't really like him that much, and I think the fact that this novel also felt a little more juvenile compared to Yang Chen's and Kyoshi's stories, I think influences how much I really enjoyed the book as well. On the other hand, I really liked the introduction to new characters. I think that this book did a good job of expanding the universe still in ways that we haven't seen, despite focusing on a very, closed conflict. I would say that compared to the Yang Chen books, this feels a little easier to track. You're not being, pulled everywhere all at once. Yeah, and I also really like the added lore about some other avatars that are in this book. So, if you are interested in a story that I just summarized, and you want to know more about the Avatar universe for your first-hand experience, go ahead, give the book a read. But if you're here for the review and you want to hear my more in detailed thoughts, keep listening because we're going to start getting into the spoilers. First, let's talk about the overarching plot of this story. I will say, just like Roku, how he had felt, I would say that the plot was very boring to start. I think, him being announced the Avatar and then going to the Southern Air Temple and then just doing the same type of disaster relief over and over, expecting it to be the same over and over without thinking that you're going to do anything different is pretty boring. And I think that was parallel to how he was feeling in that moment. And I don't know if that was good writing in the sense of, I think it was hard to get through that part of the book. Yeah, I'll leave that up to you guys to argue in the comments if you thought, getting through that was hard for you as well, or if that was just me. Secondly, for the plot, the end of the book was not satisfying. This book makes a lot of commentary on colonization and very real world things that we see happen all the time. Think Puerto Rico, Hawaii, at least for the United States, and then even think Philippines. This plot, this story had I'm assuming it had a lot of Filipino influence because of how the natives had certain cultural things, like how they would be, you would have to be blessed from the chief, and even their names, and the fact that it's an island culture. I think that I saw the cultural significance of the Philippines in this story, and I think that the story is actually really sad, and I think that it's also very real, and I think that it's not satisfying at all. And the reason I say that is because Sozin and Roku are at essentially the heart of this book, and they are the driving forces of the plot in general, and they I personally don't think that they're good people, not even Roku. Like, I really don't think that even in this book, by the end of it, that he is redeemable. The thing is that why I think I don't find it very satisfying at all, because when you reference the original Avatar show, by the end of it, like by the end when he's dying, he still hasn't redeemed himself because he still hasn't been able to take accountability for his friendship with Sozin. And I'm going to get more into their character dynamics, but essentially, I'm really mad that this island was taken advantage of for their resources, and that there is an argument that was made back and forth, also chastising the chief for wanting to defend his land. Like, I get that, like, being like, I'm going to kill everybody that comes onto this island is not right. Like, I agree with that. At the same time, I also believe that he's had the right to defend himself in the sense, given the context we are given. The other part of me that is really mad is that they never completely explain the history of the island. It simply dies with Chief Ulo. It makes me angry because we are given this chief, right? He is telling everybody we need to protect ourselves because these bad things are going to happen, right? And he's doing everything he can to protect everybody, but at the same time, he's also seen as a power-hungry man because he's essentially also telling lies to his people, and I don't think that's right. But at the same time, everything that he said would happen low-key happened. So it's also like, who is really right? Because at the end of the story, the winner is Sozin because they come back for the minerals. At the end of the day, the island was not protected, and there weren't really hard consequences for the people that hurt this island, and Sozin is the one who's being able to benefit from it all still. And Roku doesn't know that, but it's like he should have done even more to ensure that this island would not have been impacted the way it was. And I think that as somebody that looks at our current state of the world, knows certain stories that like emulate this one, it's very like, bro, what the hell? Like, it sucks, and it's really not satisfying at all, and I feel like not being able to explain the entire history of the island is another thing that frustrates me, because it's like, we never completely know if Ulo was completely justified in saying all that he said, Like, this leads me into talking about the characters, because I believe that a lot of this story, I could not believe the narrators if it was Sozin or Roku. I only believe the narrators if it was coming from Gyatso's perspective or Malaya's perspective. And I'm getting into this. I don't like Roku or Sozin. And I think we know why I wouldn't like Sozin. He's literally a horrible person. But I also don't like Roku because I also don't think that he's a good person to start. Essentially, I'll explain myself. Roku knows that he's not the most morally sound person. Like, he is, he's conflicted with his identity as a Fire National, right? Versus being the Avatar. And that's like the main shtick here. And I also still don't believe that by the end of the book, he's given himself up completely to all of the nations as the world's Avatar. I really don't believe that. Despite the book trying to get us there. And I feel this way because at the end, Sozin's like, how can I make this better? Yada, yada, yada. Roku doesn't ever completely confront Sozin about anything. He's never like, why did you really send me here? Were you lying to me? And part of that is because Sozin tells the truth automatically. And then Roku just takes that as like oh, you're being honest. Like, you're a good person for telling me the truth, even though you lied to me in the first place. And it's not like he was like, I guess you could say that he had some remorse because Roku had almost died. But at the end of the day, Sozin was literally twirling him around his finger the entire time. Like, Roku never got mad. And I think that's part of the reason why I was frustrated is that Roku never stood on business at all. He was like, you're my friend, you're telling the truth now, it's fine, we'll make up and be friends. But I think that in the context of being the Avatar and Sozin being the Fire Nation prince, and especially if he's your friend, you need to make sure your friends stay accountable for things that they do. I guess I'm just frustrated that he was like, oh, we can make up, just make sure this island is semi-protected and make sure that there are more Air Nation people around the world. I understand where he's coming from, but I don't think that was enough. Like, he had to do a little more there, you know? Let me say that I think I also don't like Roku because the fact that, one, I think a lot of people forget that Roku was a very privileged person. Like, he was already like within the ranks of near royalty before he was the Avatar. So it's like the second that he becomes the Avatar, he really doesn't understand the context of the world. Like, he has literally been bathed and polished with the royals ever since he remembers, and the only bad thing that's ever happened to him that we get to know is that he's lost his brother, and that's where Sozin comes in and takes advantage of him and fills this like hole. Sozin becomes his quote-unquote brother and takes advantage of Roku for his entire life because of the context of him losing his twin brother when they were younger. So I don't know, I just feel like within the context of knowing that Roku's end and also his beginning, like, he doesn't get any better to me at all. If anything, I think he gets worse as a character. Personally. That's my personal opinion. And then, since I'm already talking about his brother, I also don't think I cared about his brother. And that sucks, but I also think that's the context of the story. Like, I think it sucks that I didn't care, but we didn't get to know him that much, and I think that a lot of the writing assumes that I would know how their dynamic is as twins. His twin Yasu was supposed to be the stronger one, the better one, and Roku's supposed to be the lesser, despite him being the Avatar. And this is supposed to be a journey where he gets to show himself who he really is. And it's like, I think there's something that's falling flat there, and that the trope isn't sticking for me, because I don't care. One, I don't care about his brother, which is really sad to say, but I really don't care. But I can understand why he would need a lost brother to connect him to characters like Gyatso and Sozin. Like, I understand that as a motor, but I just didn't really care that much. And now let's talk about my favorite character, because also this is the only character that they decided to, I think they killed 2 characters in this book. I think they killed 2. And this one, it makes me really angry because it's like she was the best character, okay? Like, Malaya, the island native that is introduced in this book, who is essentially a scout, who is a non-bender, that was trying to argue to not kill everybody coming onto the island, was killed. She was killed by Sozin, like front blank, bam, dead, and then crushed by the cave system, by the tunnels, and there's absolutely no consequence for her death. Like, and that also pisses me off, because Roku also never addresses that with Sozin. Like, it's like, bro, somebody else just died, and your homeboy was the only one that was seen with her last. There's something's wrong there, right? And then Gyatso also, like, he has to go through this other moment where he has to grieve again. And I know that he probably suspects that Sozin did that, but he didn't call it out. And that's also a frustrating part where it's like, somebody needs to call this motherfucker out, because it feels like he's running around with all this privilege and all this power, and nobody's saying anything. And that's literally what happens probably throughout the entire series, because we know what he does. Like, okay. We're done talking about the characters, because that was a lot of my frustrations with essentially all the characters except for Gyatso and Malaya, because I did really like their characters, and I think I would have liked to also see a little more of Gyatso, in the sense of, like, part of him feels like Aang 2.0, although he was 1.0, but because of the chronological way that these things came out, I think maybe it's supposed to be written where it's like, yeah, we can see where Aang got his personality from. But I also want to just see more of Gyatso. You know what I mean? That's it for characters. We're going on to themes, because I could talk about that all day. I think the main theme for this book was essentially supposed to be grief and loss, in the sense that this ties back to my earlier point where I think that the plot was very unsatisfying, and I think that ties into how we're supposed to process our grief and our loss. And it talks about, like, you know, like, what is the right way to grieve, and also the dynamics that come with the feeling of grief. With Sozin, Roku, and Roku's twin brother Yasu, once he died, Sozin filled that hole and really was there for Roku in a sense that he was he was being a true friend. I don't deny that. But at the same time, he was also being a horrible friend by manipulating to do things. Like Sozin says, like later in the book, where it's like, oh, Roku's changing because I can't tell him exactly what to do. And at the end of the day, when somebody wants to control you, and that's the only reason they want to be friends with you, that's not a good friend. And I think that ties also back into Sozin's influence with Azula. I think it's the same thing. Yeah, with the grief, Roku gives Gyatso a lot of advice, and he talks about learning to love a person that you've lost in a different way while they're gone. And I think that a lot of people can probably take that personally in different ways with their own lost and loved ones. Yeah, I do think that Roku and Gyatso's dynamic was really nice to see, as far as I think those two actually kept each other accountable, in the sense that Gyatso wasn't afraid to stand up to Roku, and it made Roku fight him back. There wasn't this like weird thing, because even though they try to emphasize at the beginning of the book that Roku's the only one that stands up to Sozin, he doesn't stand up to him. Like, that's a lie. Like, I don't believe that for 1 second. And yeah, we're continuing on the themes of grief and loss. This also goes to Malaya after her village gets ransacked by the Earthbenders, and she's overcome with the sense of loss and grief. And she wants to take vengeance, and she is just going at it with these Earthbenders. You know, it is scary to see her be overtaken with rage. She definitely feels bad for it once she bludgeons the heck out of the Earthbender that she attacks. But I don't blame her for it. I think she's the best character. I'm just really disappointed that she died, and I think that she is still morally sound despite being in a fit of rage and punching somebody a lot. Oh, and then on the same theme of grief and loss, I think this goes into a conversation of the island, in the sense of like, they probably have lost a lot of people because of war. And maybe it wasn't outsiders, and maybe it was just the native tribes just fighting each other for control of the cave, the resource. Maybe that was what had happened, you know? But at the same time, this island has lost a lot of people, and I think that despite Ulo being wrong with needing to kill everybody that comes, like, the island itself was essentially also a grieving body. And I think that that's an interesting conversation to have as far as what was the right stance to take. And yeah, the theme of morality always comes into the Avatar world, and I think that in this novel, I would say that killing essentially is still really bad. Usually that's the moral stance. It's really bad, but sometimes avatars have to do it, and Roku did it, Yangchen did it, and Kyoshi did it. I think that there is a lot more nuance as far as being from Roku's perspective. Like, I think part of me that doesn't like him is that I think that he's really bad at making judgments. And this leads me into, you know, the differences between Avatar and the morality of deciding or judging if somebody is worth killing for the peace of the world, you know? So this is my hypothesis on why we love certain avatars versus don't like certain avatars. One is that I think that a lot of people love Kyoshi, not because she's like a 6'5" giant, big buff lady that can bend all elements, but because of her ability to make a good judgment, to call something out as wrong and to stand for what is right instantly. Like, Kyoshi doesn't even think twice about it, and it's because of her perspective growing up poor and also like not having anything. Like, she grew up on the streets. She was running with the rebels. Like, she knows what's wrong and what's right because of her position within power. Like, she grew up seeing people in power taking advantage of the less fortunate. And I think that's why her sense of moral standing is like, it's snappy. She sees something, she calls it out instantly, and you're cut off. Like, and there's something that I think a lot of people look up to when somebody's able to do that. And I think that's also why she was able to last for 200 years, is because she was making judgments like that, like this. She was handling business. But at the same time, Roku has to I don't want to say deal with, that's the wrong word. Roku has to sort out more of this nuance because of his position of privilege and his proximity to power. He doesn't, like Gyatso points this out very early on, where he's like, dude, you wouldn't even know, like, what it's like to have to struggle because you were living it up. Like, he really doesn't have this perspective on struggle. And this is why I really don't like him, is because even at the beginning when he's like offering relief to all these towns, he still doesn't care. He's like, why am I here? Why am I not Airbender? Like, despite seeing people struggling, he still doesn't care. Like, he makes me angry. And yeah, I think that's why a lot of people love Kyoshi versus Roku. And at least that's my opinion. Like, that's, I think, can describe easily why I would like her more than him. And to keep talking about Kyoshi, despite this being a Roku book, I also really liked the added lore for her. So despite there being no wars and Kyoshi's era of peace, she was still definitely contributing to the cycle of violence, because she would end somebody's life that she deemed as like bad, that would be dangerous. And then the other people that loved that person, that was in cahoots with that person, would chase her. And then they'd probably kill other people just to get her attention. And, you know, that makes sense. And it makes sense that Kyoshi was like, you know what? I need to stop doing that. Like, she's over 200 years old. She needs to rest. And there's still the mystery of how she died, though. And that's interesting to me in the sense of, like, I feel like I don't think she died in the sense of like she laid down and she went to sleep. I feel like she meditated and her entire body disappeared. Like, I really feel like that's something she would do. But yeah, the commentary of like, you know, like the Avatar spirit always finds the right person at the right time. Personally, I don't think Roku was the right person at the right time, because I honestly think that him being the Avatar is what had caused Sozin. Like, if he wasn't the Avatar, I don't think Sozin would have been able to do all that he was able to do, because he was friends with them. Like, imagine if you were a different Fire Nation like person that wasn't in proximity to this power, that didn't grow up with him, and then you find out he's doing all this stuff, you'd be more like, hey, you need to stop. Versus if you're his friend and you're like, well, you're not hurting anybody right now, so, like, it's fine. But he's about to hurt everybody! Anyways, we already know what happens. We already know what he does. Anyways, I think that this book was harder to read for me. I think that if you are an avid Avatar fan, it's worth the read for yourself, because you can take away a lot more. I can definitely tell, like, sometimes when I'm, like, trying to rethink, like, while I'm writing this review, when I'm trying to rethink about certain things, I do leave out details. I do forget certain things that happen. And there's still a lot of interesting lore in this book. And if you're an avid Avatar fan, I would still recommend to read it. But if you are a casual fan, I would say maybe if there's an Avatar wiki with the summary for this, and if you were interested in specific lore, definitely just give the wiki a good look through. I think this book is harder to read for me. Let me know what you guys think. If you have, like, obviously if you've made it this far and you've read the book, let me know what you think. If this book was hard to read for you, if it was easy to read for you, what you liked, what you didn't like. And yeah, I will be reading the next one as well. So stay like and subscribe for when that comes. And yeah, I hope you enjoy this video. Make sure leave, like, comment, sub, and I'll talk to you guys later.